Hi everyone. Today I would like to talk to you about tarballs and how to create them in Linux. So when we talk about tarballs, what we are talking about is a way of putting a bunch of information, files, and folders together so that we can work with it easily. Now this can give us the ability to do things like create backups that we can work with. Another thing that tar can actually be used for is you can create compressed files as well. So if you wanted to save a bunch of, let's say, your homework and you wanted to compress it, tar would actually give you the ability to do that. Now, the way that tar is going to end up working is we use the command tar. And then we have to give it some options. So the options that I'm going to use today are CVF. Now, the way that these options work is C means create, V, so that's create the tarball. V means verbose, so everything that's going into the tarball, I want to make sure I can see it on the screen so that I know everything that's going in there. And then F is file. Now, an important note here is whatever set of options or switches that you would like to give tar, you have to make sure F goes last. I'll show you what happens if it doesn't in a moment. Now the next thing that we have with tar is we have to have two arguments. We have a source and we have a destination. Now this is going to potentially look a little different to you depending on what you're used to, but the order is actually destination and then source. So in this case, I'm going to have my destination be my current folder. So what we remember from paths is current folder is /, and then I'm going to name it test tarball.tar. Now, you can name it anything you want. You don't technically have to say .tar, but I think it's a good idea because that way we can tell at a glance what this is going to look like and what kind of file this is. The same way that I recommend doing things like .sh or .sed. Things like that give us the ability to see at a glance what type of file this is. Is it a script file like python.py? Is it a shell script file, so .sh? Is it a tarball.tar? And putting this in there gives us the ability to see that quickly. Now, the path that we are using is /, so that's in the current folder, but we could just as easily change it to do something like put it in the home folder, and you can work with the paths there and then name it whatever you would like. Now after that, we're going to have our source. Now in this case, my source is just going to be everything in my current folder. However, I could make this a little bit more specific. I could do things like, I want everything in my current folder that's labeled a text file, or I want everything in my current folder that's a shell script file, or I want everything in my current folder that contains the word Linux, things like that. So you can work with wildcards and things to decide what you want to include in here. For the purposes of this, I'm actually just going to do everything so that you can see what'll happen. Now, when I hit enter, you can see everything that was in my folder. So you can see my files and folders ended up getting in there. Now, one of the things that you might see if you aren't careful about the switches or options, if you, for example, switched this around and did FV instead of VF, so remember C is create, V is verbose, that's how this information is showing up, and then F is file. So if I switched the order, however, you can see that this isn't necessarily going to work the same way. Now, if I switch the order and let's say called it test2.tarball, you can see I'm going to get an error. It's going to say files in the archive not dumped, exiting with failures due to previous errors. So if I am creating a new tarball like this, I have to make sure that I'm saying F as the last option. So this F has to go at the end here, and when you're creating, make sure you have the C. The V is the optional part. I like to include it so I can see what's going in there, but you don't have to. So you can see what a big difference that can end up making. Now, if we end up looking at our files, we can see that we were able to create test tarball.tar, and we can now work with it. So you can also use tar to untar our files, as in break them apart again, and that's just a different option. And if you want to look up the manual on how to use tar, you can do that. But this is the basic format of how you would end up creating a tarball. I hope this was helpful for you today, and I hope you're having a lovely day.